Happy Saturday, everybody. This is Joshua Coleman, and I'm here to present my case for God. Growing up, we all hear from Richard Dawkins. He's one of the more infamous atheists. Well, not so much anymore. If you haven't heard, he stopped debating Christians, so to not give Christians a platform because he just wanted them shut out. He didn't want to put them on par with atheism and naturalism. So he stopped debating them altogether. But now he's pretty sick and it's hard for him to get along right now. So remember him, pray for him, pray that God reveals His Son to him. I try to a lot. I have a burden for Richard Dawkins. I hope he gets saved. It's happened before. I believe it can happen again, but something he's famous for is coining the definition of faith. That faith is belief without evidence, and this has become somewhat of a mantra for atheists and skeptics. You know, um, that there's just no evidence for God. That I don't believe because there's just no evidence. There's no proof for God. You can't prove God. You hear this all the time, especially from laymen, someone that maybe you just met. Maybe they're not a scholar, or maybe that you know Um, but surely Richard Dawkins and others that claim this, such as Sam Harris and a few others, will say, "Hey, there's just no evidence for God." So of course there's evidence, and surely they've heard the arguments and they've seen the evidence because they debate a lot of Christians and a lot of theists. So obviously there's evidence, and they know of it. So either one, they're lying; two, they're ignorant; or three, they just mean something else by evidence. And we'll talk a little bit about those after I present a few evidences for God and for the Christian faith. So, um, so is there evidence for God? Well, let's look at a few arguments that we can all hopefully recite from the back of our hand. There's the cosmological argument, the origin of space, time, and matter. Where did it all come from? Can't come from non-being, can't come from nowhere. It has to have a cause. Premise one goes like this: whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Um, we know whatever begins to exist must have a cause. That's just what it is. If we go on a walk in the woods, we find a ball on the ground, we we can we can rest assured that that ball came from somewhere. It didn't just pop into being from non-being, or it didn't come from nowhere. It had to have had a cause. The size of the ball doesn't matter. The size of a house still has to have a cause. Size of a planet or the entire universe still has to have a cause. Same thing with the universe. The universe had a beginning. This is agreed upon by both sides of the table, that the universe did in fact have a beginning. Um, so therefore, if the universe had a beginning, it had to have had a cause. So how do we jump from cause to God? Well, the cause of the universe would have to be non-universe, have to be immaterial, spaceless, timeless, has to be eternal, has to be uncaused, and has to be very powerful, and it has to be a personal agent, because necessary objects such as abstract objects, they have no causal power. To create or to begin or to cause, you have to have intentionality, which only comes from a mind. So if it's immaterial, it has to be an unembodied mind, much like our God, the God of the Bible. God is a spirit. He's an unembodied mind. So let's move on to one of my favorite arguments, the teleological argument. This teleological argument is is praised by some skeptics because it does satisfy their their empirical craving. Usually, the argument goes like this: premise one, the universe is finely tuned for our existence. Premise two, the the fine tuning of the universe is due to physical necessity, chance, or design. Premise three, it's not due to physical necessity or chance, therefore it must be designed. And if it's designed, it has to be a designer. So we can go straight to God, straight to theism from the conclusion. Now, what about So physical necessity. Well, there's no reason. There's no one who's to say that our constants have to be the way they are. Why couldn't our parameters be a little bit different? Why can't the atomic force be a little bit different? I mean, if it was, there wouldn't be any life. So, but who's to? But parameters aren't. They don't have to be the way they are. So that's not by physical necessity. What about chance? Well, what is chance? Chance, and I don't hear many who argue for theism whenever they bring up chance. R.C. Sproul, he would just explain what chance is. Chance has no causal power. It's a description of what humans give to the outcome of events, to the probability of outcomes. Chance is an empty term, has no causal power, so therefore it can't cause or design anything. It can't dial in parameters for physics and laws that govern our universe. Chance is an empty term, therefore our third choice is all that's left. It must be designed. So probably one of the best arguments for God is the moral argument. It goes like this. One, if God does not exist, moral values and duties do not exist. Premise two, objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists, right? You have to have a moral lawgiver if you have objective moral values and duties. So if God doesn't exist, then if everything's material, then who's to say a million years ago we didn't evolve morals like bees have, where they kill off their fertile female larvae, and there's only one reproducing female in a society. So there's nothing objective or binding about our morals. And on top of that, we would all be predetermined, pre-wired to think one way or another. So not just morals, but truth would just be determined. There would be no actual truth to any claims. It would just be one bag of chemicals or bag of meat that has something against another bag of chemicals. So there's nothing objective without God. You can't have objective morals, because or to have objective morals, this is where a good defense against nihilism is whenever there's a moral act or event, it's always to a person or about a person or from a person. So the personhood just has an intrinsic value to them that in order for people to place morals on them and moral obligations and duties. So premise two, that objective moral values and duties do exist. Everybody has this automatic inside standard of right and wrong, that evil does exist. Therefore, God must exist. There must be a moral lawgiver. So the argument that Christianity stands and falls on is the resurrection of Christ. Now look at members of the Jesus Seminar and Christianity alike. Most New Testament scholars agree on basic facts about the crucifixion, about the resurrection. That according to the historical documents, that Jesus of Nazareth did live. He was crucified under Roman rule. He was buried. That's important. And that tomb was found empty by a group of his women followers. And they all agree upon the appearances that the disciples and earlier followers of Jesus did experience appearances of Jesus. And the newfound faith in the disciples, they were afraid. They're hiding out. They thought they were about to be crucified, but something happened to them that made them bold and to go out and proclaim this. And most of them died for this cause. And finally, the rapid spread of Christianity. Christianity has something powerful pushed it forward that propagated Christianity all over the world. So the best possible explanation, the most probable explanation for the facts of the resurrection of Jesus is that God did in fact raise Jesus from the dead. So the claims of Jesus are authenticated here. Not only does it prove God exists, but it proves that Jesus was who he claimed to be, God in the flesh, the revelation of God to mankind. So when people say there's no evidence for God, we have very good reasons to believe that God does exist. Thank you.